So John Rose called. What does he want to say? Oh, maybe he wants to come on and talk about the medicinal marijuana
I think
thing.
that would be fantastic.
Okay. That'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great. All right. Well, let's call him back. Congressman John Rose, of course, he wants to be Tennessee's next governor. And Congressman, you were listening to our thank you for calling in. You were listening to our conversation regarding J6 and the differences. We're all talking here amongst each other, amongst ourselves, about the differences between you and Senator Blackburn, who is also, of course, running. And I played the senator's answer on January 6th. And, of course, everyone knows there was the violence, and then the Senate, Senator Blackburn, among others, decided they would vote to certify the election of Joe Biden. And this was her response. I want to play this for you, and you have a response to this. So this was Senator Blackburn's complete answer.
Sure. And January 6th was that ceremonial vote, and basically that process was over. At that point, we went in, we signed papers to object, and then you had the issues of the day. I think we all trust President Trump and how he moved forward with the pardons from individuals that were involved in that day. That's his right. That was a decision he made. That is something that you support.
So that was 36 seconds, Congressman Rose, and you wanted to respond to that?
Well, sure. I think the noteworthy thing there in her answer is that what we were doing on January 6th, the Congress's role in certifying the election back in on January 6th of 2021 was not ceremonial. We were fulfilling a constitutional duty, and as prescribed under the Electoral Count Act of 1887, which was the law at that time. And had we objected, had sufficient numbers of members of Congress objected and voted to object to the count, that would have potentially put the election in play. And there is a procedure spelled out there that would have done that. So I and others who objected, I think, understood what was going on that day, that it was not a ceremonial process, but it was actually an opportunity, as spelled out in the law at that time, for Congress to decide whether the various states had conducted the election appropriately. And I think the history gives us the context that there were problems with the 2020 election. And we see that, I think, in the context that comes to bear when we see how the election of 2024, and particularly when you look at the 2020 election in light of 2016 and 2024, we can see, I think, very starkly that there were problems in 2020. And some of us looked at that, felt like there should be a further addressing of that, and that was what we were doing on January 6th. It was not a ceremonial process, but a real chance for the members of Congress, as set out in the Constitution and as directed by the Electoral Count Act that governed that process at the time, to take a serious look at the process of how we count electoral votes and whether or not the states had conducted elections appropriately.
Yeah,
so I think she's just misplaced in her attempt to answer why she then did not object. And she had committed that she would object and then failed to do so on when push came to shove on January 6th.
I think if I remember correctly, I mean, and everything you say is correct. One of the things that happened is they were objecting. There was the violence, and then I think the senators, by and large, decided to move on and go ahead and certify. You, though, held firm. You objected in 6 states, citing widespread concern from constituents over election integrity. And yeah, you never did back off. Can you tell me, Congressman Rose, about that day and the pressure that perhaps you felt from some in Washington, D.C., to sign on to certify the election? Was there a lot of pressure?
I think it was the darkest day for our president, frankly, and there were those who thought after the break into the Capitol occurred that maybe he'd gone too far and that they needed to back down, and some did. That was, I think, the real moment when, you have to decide, what do you believe? Who do you support? Do you support the president's vision for restoring the greatness of America? Do you support free and fair elections in our country? You have to stand up or you have to fold, and some folded. But there were, in total, 147 Republican members of Congress that voted to object to one or more of the state's electoral counts that day. And those are the true patriots, I believe, who stood with the president in the darkest hour, were able to look past the exigencies of the moment and make a principled decision about what they should do to stand up for freedom and democracy.
John Rose is on the line, a last-minute conversation reacting to Senator Marsha Blackburn and her comments regarding January 6th. How would you define your relationship with President Trump? We were sort of musing earlier. It was in the 5 o'clock hour, so you probably were not awake yet. But we were musing earlier, talking about who President Trump would endorse, either you or Senator Blackburn. And I'm just curious if you have heard from the president, what your relationship with him is like. I think it is abundantly clear that you are pro-MAGA. But tell me about your relationship with President Trump.
Well, I've had a very good relationship with the president going all the way back to his first run. I supported him then, endorsed him in all 3 of his elections. He has endorsed me in all 4 of my elections. I've run for public office 4 times and won each time, and was so thrilled to have the president's support each time that I've run for office. And as you've heard me say on the show, I ran for Congress back in 2018 because I was worried about a Congress that was not supporting the president in his vision for restoring the greatness of America. And, came to Washington, went to Washington at that time trying to be helpful in that. As we all know, and as we remember in 2017 and 18, Republicans controlled the House and the Senate. But unfortunately, the Republican delegations in those 2 bodies at that time, I don't think were fully on board with the president. And I think history shows that. And I was frustrated. I know many stalwart Republicans and stalwart supporters of the president agree with that. And that's why I went, because I wanted to be there and help get our country back on track. And that's why I'm so thrilled now that last November 5th, the American people gave us the opportunity to take a second crack at that, and so proud to be in Washington, and glad to have now I think the vast majority, overwhelming majority of our elected Republicans are on board now. Unfortunately, they weren't during that first term in office of the president, and their voting records reflect that. And so I came to Washington to help the president, and am proud of my record of supporting him, including, and I think most notably, being there at the darkest moment on January 6th and standing up for making sure that our elections are run appropriately in this country.
Let's talk a little bit about, and just very briefly, because I know this was a last-minute conversation, but so President Trump, of course, as you know, there's some state business now. The president wants to eliminate the Department of Education, those funds going back to the state of Tennessee and all the states, of course. And if you were governor for the state of Tennessee, obviously education would be a very big priority in your administration if you were elected as governor?
Absolutely. And from my visits with Tennesseans over the last year, that's the number one issue that Tennesseans point to. We simply have to prepare our kids for the jobs and the opportunities of the future. And Tennessee has had that as a priority for a long time. Each of our governors in my adult lifetime have made that a priority. And we've made progress, and we are making progress, but we are not where we need to be. And so if I'm hired to be the next governor of Tennessee, I will make that my number one priority. And one of the things that I've pledged there is that if the Tennesseans pick me to be their governor, I will appoint a commissioner of education who has spent time teaching in a Tennessee public school classroom. And I think that's important because today 90% of our kids are going to graduate from public schools. They're coming through the public school system. And so we have to get that right. And our teachers deserve to know that they have a governor who wants someone helping to lead that effort, who has experienced it firsthand and who has that firsthand perspective of the challenges that our teachers face. And there's no substitute for getting that experience. And I'm not taking a cheap shot at anyone, because I think we've had competent people, but we need to send a message. One of the things I've learned as a leader in small businesses is that you lead by example, and you establish, trust with people by showing them that you place trust in them. And so that's why I'm making that pledge, is because I want the teachers across the state to understand that their leaders understand the challenges they face and are willing to confront them with that full knowledge and understanding.
And that does make a lot of sense, and I appreciate that sentiment. And I know a lot of other people do as well that are listening. Governor Lee, the National Guard has been now utilized and deployed to help deal with illegal immigration in the state. Assuming you're okay with that?
Well, absolutely. I think that the governor should do everything they can to help enforce the laws of this country. And, as public officials, we take an oath of office, and those oaths include an oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws of our country and our state. And if a local official, they take a similar oath. And so I think the governor is honoring that oath. And I think we should see all of our leaders do everything they can to help uphold our laws, and including our immigration laws. And we know that the prior president has put us in a really bad spot by letting millions of illegals come into our country. And I think Governor Lee is doing the right thing by assisting in every way he can to help the president resolve those problems.
I hate that I have to ask this next question, Congressman Rose, but some have called into the radio station and made mention of the age difference between you and your wife. And so I just want people to hear it from you, your relationship with your wife, and when you met, how long you courted, when you got married, and all that, because I know that there is quite of an age difference between you and your wife. And so, and some people have said some not very nice things. So I want to give you a chance to characterize how you and your wife met and talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'll take a point of personal privilege, if I might, and wish Chelsea a happy birthday. This is her birthday, and so
Nice.
Happy birthday, Chelsea. And thank you for letting me do that. I am 24 years older than Chelsea. Same age difference, incidentally, between Melania and President Trump. And we have a wonderful marriage. We've been married almost 15 years, coming up on 15 years of marriage, and we've got two wonderful sons, Guy and Sam, and just could not be more blessed in the relationship that we have. She is my rock and my secret weapon and my supporter, and I would just tell all of your listeners, if you elect me to be governor, it's a 2-for-1 deal. And actually the free piece that you get with this, the free addition you get with this is Chelsea, and it's better than the thing that you're buying if you hire me as governor. So, and people will see that over the coming year, and I think those who've met Chelsea already understand that. Years ago, I was in FFA, Future Farmers of America, and had a great experience there. And I back up to say this, and I may be using too much time, but after I was out of FFA, I continued to support the FFA organization financially and as a volunteer. And so we fast forward to along about 2007, and in a volunteer capacity is first where I met and became aware of Chelsea. She was a standout star in the FFA from the Eagleville chapter over in Rutherford County. And so I became aware of her, like I've met literally hundreds, thousands of FFA members through the years. Fast forward 2 or 3 years, and I get a call, an interesting call one day. And so in my role as a volunteer, I didn't have a tremendous amount of contact with her. I just was aware of who she was and saw how she was progressing in the FFA. We didn't have a relationship. We were not close. We didn't spend tremendous time together other than at events where I would see her in her role as an FFA member and in whatever official role I might have been in or volunteer role. But there came a day when I got a call from Chelsea, and she said, "I'm interested in you and I would like to date you. So she asked for that date, and
Wow.
I turned her down.
That a girl.
That has never happened to me, like, ever.
and I was to say the least, taken aback, flabbergasted, maybe a better word, by that. And you should have her on sometime. She'll tell you the story, but from her perspective. But I told her that's a really bad idea. There's a big age difference between us, and that wouldn't be a good situation. And I persisted in that for months. But she was very persistent, and I'll spare all the details. But ultimately, I said, well, what do your parents think about this? And she said, well, they've recommended against it. But they've ultimately told me, we want you to be happy, and so we will support you in whatever you choose to do. And so I said, well, I'd like to meet your parents. And so we arranged for that to happen, and I met her parents, and they expressed the similar views I had about maybe this not being a good idea. But Chelsea was very persistent, and so they said, but we want our daughter to be happy, and we'll support what she decides to do. Ultimately, we went out on a date, and it was, I guess, easy to fall in love with Chelsea at that time, and we did, and we had a very short engagement and got married in January of 2011. So coming up on our 15th anniversary, and never regretted a moment of that. There's a big age difference, but she's a very mature young lady, and could not be prouder of her, and certainly can't be any happier with the children that we've got, the great sons that we've got, that are going to be the 9th generation of my family to hopefully live here in Tennessee and farm the same farm that my ancestors came here and started in 1790.
Well, Congressman, I that's such a great story, and I appreciate you answering that question. And I don't know, I've only got about 30 to 45 seconds left. Do you have any parting shots? You want to give us your 45-second elevator pitch for John Rose for governor?
Well, sure. So I am a Christian, a husband, a father, a conservative outsider, a farmer, and a businessman. And the job of being governor of Tennessee is an executive job, not a legislative job. And I have that experience from taking businesses from the idea phase to success, creating scores of jobs in this state, signing the front side of a paycheck, taking a vision and seeing it become reality and providing the leadership for that. And that's the job of being governor of Tennessee. I've learned a lot as a legislator. I'm not a career legislator, and I'm coming home at the end of my current term that I'm going to finish out on January 3rd, 2027. But I think I've got more to offer to Tennessee, and I hope the people of Tennessee will give me a chance to tell them about myself and for them to learn about me, and hopefully they will choose me to be their next governor.
Let me ask you.
I probably ask for their vote and support.
Congressman, and guys, I know Joan and Sam, I know I'm running late, but people are asking me to ask you to clarify the marijuana issue. I played all the audio earlier, but people want it clarified. So you are anti-legalization of marijuana, you're anti-legalization of medicinal marijuana, and if there was a lot of polling out there that said that folks were for medicinal marijuana, it came to your desk. If it was passed through the state legislature, yesterday on the Chris Hand Show, you did say that you would veto such a measure. Is that correct?
That's right. I think that medical marijuana and recreational marijuana would be a huge mistake for our state. I think it's a huge mistake for our country where it has been done, and I would veto that legislation. And, of course, I would live with whatever the legislature ultimately decided to do with that. But I think it's a bad idea. I've studied it carefully. I've asked countless medical professionals and law enforcement professionals about this. I've done the reading about the science on it, and I am convinced that this is not a good path for America to go down. And so I think there may be some, efficacious materials in marijuana, contents in marijuana, active ingredients, but we should medicinalize those just as we've done in many, many other areas if there are benefits that can be had there. So I would actually favor allowing some research to happen there to determine whether, the positive impacts that some have experienced or have, feel they've experienced from marijuana, if we can isolate why that is and turn that into medicine, I think that would be a good idea.
So
and certainly something we shouldn't be afraid of.
It sounds like there's just a little bit of a crack there where you may have a bit of an open mind or might think about having an open mind.
Well, I think what I'm saying is, there are those who swear by, the medical benefits that they've received, pain killing and other things. And so, we have been doing this for literally hundreds of years. We've been identifying substances and extracting the materials or the active ingredients that are useful, and we can do that with marijuana. We have not done as much research there because it was scheduled in such a way that it's not been easy to do that research legally, and so we should let that happen. Absolutely. We should look at everything out there, to see if there are positive impacts that can be and as human beings, we've learned a lot, and of course, a lot of those have come from home remedies where prior generations of people have realized, this actually works. And so if that's true here, then we should figure that out. Absolutely. There's no reason to stick our head in the sand about that. Right. But I think legalizing the smoking of marijuana, which has many other deleterious impacts and effects, is not the answer. And I think we have ample evidence to see that.
All right, Congressman, thank you for playing along and answering my questions, and appreciate you calling in. I got a lot of information there, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Very good. Love to do it anytime. Appreciate you.
All right, we'll see you. We'll see you later. All right.